and the descendants of slaves. Indians, race, and slavery. From the late 18th century through the end of the U.S. Civil War, Choctaw and Chickasaw men and women held people of African descent in slavery. Like their white Southern counterparts, Indians bought, sold, owned, and exploited Black people's labor and reproduction for economic and social gain. Choctaws and Chickasaws purchased slaves, men, women, and children to work on their Mississippi farms and plantations and to serve in their homes. Slaveholders and those who did not own slaves embraced a racial ideology that affirmed Black people's inherent difference and inferiority and thus justified their enslavement. Whether they owned only a few slaves, rented a slave for seasonal labor, or operated a large plantation with hundreds of slaves, Choctaws and Chickasaws understood that slavery allowed for the accumulation of personal wealth. Enslaved people cleared and plowed fields, hauled logs, drained swamps, planted and harvested crops, drove wagons, built homes, wove fabric, sewed clothes, cooked meals, and cared for Indian children, all for their master's benefit. Choctaws and Chickasaws purchased slaves in private transactions with other slaveholders and at public venues in cities such as New Orleans, conducting their business with white traders and slaveholders as well as with other Indians. While most Choctaw and Chickasaw slaveholders owned only a few slaves, the majority of enslaved people were owned by a small contingent of wealthy and socially and politically influential men. Clustered in neighborhoods dominated by large farms and plantations, enslaved people worked to create durable and meaningful family and community ties with each other. They eluded their master's surveillance, circumvented laws and customs governing their speech and mobility, and sometimes successfully liberated themselves by running away. Many historians who have written about the 19th century Choctaws and Chickasaws have noted the existence of chattel slavery and simply linked it to Indians' increased participation in the early 19th century American market economy. Discussions of slavery have not concentrated on enslaved people's lives or their relationships with their Indian masters, but instead have focused on the nature of Indians' relationship to the American market economy. In the early decades of the 19th century, Euro-American settlement surged across the Deep South, pressing up against the Choctaw and Chickasaw peoples, who had long laid claim to millions of acres stretching from present-day Alabama to the Mississippi River. While the United States recognized Indians' right to the soil based on their prior occupancy, the federal government was nonetheless wholly committed to extinguishing Indian land claims. In the early decades of the 19th century, federal officials pursued measures designed to alter and eradicate Indian social and economic practices, especially their land use patterns. Framed as civilization policies, lawmakers and reformers imagined they might remake Indian people and assimilate them into the American mainstream. One key component of assimilation policies entailed dispatching Christian missionaries to Indian communities. Missionaries often regarded themselves as benevolent friends to Indians and sought to instruct them in the ways of Euro-American society. U.S. policy pressed Indians to abandon hunting and take up settled agriculture, a shift that most officials hoped would lead Indians to cede their uncultivated land to the United States. To this end, the federal government also regulated trade with Indians, establishing trading factories that supplied Indians with credit and manufactured items. Indians' gradual shift away from hunting, a largely collective enterprise, and toward more individually oriented agricultural pursuits was coeval with their changing understandings of property. Increasingly, individuals accumulated goods, whether crops or manufactures, rather than looking to traditional headmen to distribute food and other items. To the extent that historians have recognized the rise of chattel slavery among the Choctaws and Chickasaws during this